It's good to have Kalyna Stitt here with us today and her daughter. And we just want to turn the pulpit over to you. Sister Stitt, take your liberty. Do whatever God tells you to do.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, church. Hang on, let me get my notes up real quick. Well, my name is Kalyna Stitt, and this is my family, or at least most of it. That's my husband, Patrick. Some of you I know have met him before. He's from Ireland, and people don't usually forget him. We actually have 5 children. Our oldest son is not in the picture because he's at North Central College, so he was only with us in Japan for our first 2 years and wasn't there when we updated our photo. But we also have 4 other children, Finian, Levi, Alethea, and Keela, and my youngest Keela is here with us today. Now, we are church planters in Osaka, Japan. If we can get the picture of Osaka up on the screen. Yeah. It's a big city. And I'll tell you what, before we moved to Osaka, Japan, we were pastoring in Ellendale, Minnesota, which has 600 people in it. And then we moved to Osaka, which in the greater Osaka area, there are 20 million people. And God, yeah, it was quite a change. It was quite a change for us. But God called us to Osaka because he really put on our hearts that we were to go somewhere to share the gospel with people who had not only never heard the name of Jesus, but who had no one there to tell them. And Osaka is one of the least reached cities in the world. It is less than 1% Christian. Most of the people that we meet there have never even heard the name of Jesus. You mention Jesus and they say, "Who's that?" So this was on our hearts from the beginning. Now, it surprised us actually that Japan would have been a culture that was so unreached with the gospel. When you think about unreached countries, you either usually think about maybe Muslim countries or perhaps far hard to reach islands with tribes in the jungle, that kind of a thing. But Japan is a very modern society, very highly educated, wealthy people. So why have they not been reached with the gospel? Well, there are a lot of reasons for this, but part of it is it has to do with a little bit of their history, because they actually had some exposure to Christianity many, many years ago, like in the 1500s. But it was persecuted and stamped out. And then Japan closed their borders and wanted no influence from any other country at all. And it was like that for a few hundred years until they finally opened up again and had trade and connections with other countries. But to this day, the culture remains rather resistant to influences from other cultures. And so when they hear about Christianity, a lot of people are like, it's a Western religion, it's nice for you, but not really for me. So because of this, many denominations of missionaries have actually kind of given up on Japan. When we first mentioned, we're going to go to Japan, we had a lot of people say, don't go to Japan, it's too hard there. The people don't respond to the gospel. You won't be able to accomplish anything. But you know what? We do not serve a God who gives up on difficult people. We believe that the gospel flourishes in every culture. And if God gave up on difficult people, probably half of us wouldn't be in this room today. Am I right? But God is on the move in Japan. Let me tell you, God is on the move. So here's a little bit, before I start about our ministry, about the culture and religion in Japan. So if we can get the next slide up here. Because the religious culture in Japan is a mix of Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and a local religion called Shintoism. And you've probably seen pictures like this one of the Japanese temples. They're beautiful buildings with the beautiful sakura cherry blossoms and everything. It's gorgeous, gorgeous buildings. And in the next slide, you can see that's my daughter Keela in front of the Daibutsu, which is a really large statue of Buddha at a very famous temple in Nara, which is near where we live. And my son Finian at another famous temple in Kyoto, which is also close to us. So these temples and shrines are everywhere in Japan, like not just these huge famous ones, but like everywhere throughout the city. Every neighborhood will have its own little shrine. Every town will have its own one. And they each have their own festivals and their own culture and their own things that the people do. So we pass by these every day. Like, I don't know about you, but if you grew up in America in the church, you probably, reading the 10 Commandments would kind of skip over number 2. I mean, don't make any graven images and bow down and worship them. That felt like one of those kind of long ago and far away ones. As a kid, I was like, yeah, I don't think that one's a problem for me, you know? And so I never really thought that much about it. But now that we're in this country, we see it every day. My kids have no issue understanding what that commandment means because these places are close by their school and close by our house, and they pass by every day, people bowing down to statues and worshiping them, and it is a very real part of the culture in which we are working. But in addition to this, to their religion, Japanese culture is also very, very focused on work. So this is just a picture of the busy cities in Japan. It is very, very busy, especially during rush hour, because everybody is rushing to work all the time. This is very similar, actually, to American culture. It's a very like work-based culture. This is a picture I took in a train station one day when I happened to be going at the wrong time of day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even move in here. But it's very similar to American culture in that we are trained to work hard all the time. And in Japan, it starts very young. The goal of life is to work very hard and make a lot of money. And so from a very young age, when kids are in school, they are pressured by their parents and told you have to get good grades, because if you get good grades in elementary school, then you can pass the tests to get into a good middle school. And if you do really well in middle school, then you can pass the test to get into a good high school. And then if you do well in high school, you can get to college. And then if you do well in college, you can get a good job and you can make lots of money and you can work and work and work and make a lot of money. And this is essentially the goal in life for most people in Japan. And we'll come back to that in a minute. But this is the kind of culture that we were looking at as we're arriving in Japan. Now, before we actually left, I want to tell you a story about this house. So before we even left for Japan, when God was putting Japan on our hearts, I had some concerns. And I don't know about you, if you have concerns with something God's telling you to do, and you go and you bring your concerns to God, and you complain a little bit. And I went to God and I said, okay, Japan, that sounds cool and all, but you do remember that I have 5 children. Remember those kids you gave me? Yes. Japan is an expensive country, number 1, and number 2 is not designed for people with big families. Most people in Japan have very small families. Houses are tiny. And I was like, God, I don't know. I mean, we've got 5 kids in our family and small budget, missionary budget. Are you sure that Japan is the right place for us? And where are we going to live when we get there? And God, very clearly, he told me, don't worry about it. I got it. And I was like, are you sure? He's like, I have a place for you. Don't worry. I've got it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to trust you on this one. Well, another problem with going to Japan, not just small houses, expensive houses, but also most Japanese people don't want to rent to foreigners because there's been a lot of foreigners in the past who have come for short times and then not paid their rent and that sort of thing. And so a lot of places won't even rent to you if you're foreign because they don't trust you. So we're like, what are we going to do? So my husband actually went onto Facebook. He found a Facebook group for people in Osaka. And he's like, I'm just going to throw this out there. we're an American family. We're coming to Osaka. We've got 7 people in our family and not a lot of money. Anybody have an idea where we might be able to live?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's going to work." Well, a wonderful lady, Kaoru-san, she got onto Facebook and she said, "Actually, I have this house in Osaka that I had been running as a guest house, the kind of house where like you would rent out each bedroom on an Airbnb kind of thing." And she's like, "But I had to shut it down for COVID, and now I moved out to the country, so I don't want to run it as a guest house anymore. I'm looking for a large foreign family." She specifically said a foreign family to come and live in this house and rent it from me. And we're like, "Really? That's awesome. How big is it?" She's like, "It has 7 bedrooms." We're like, "What? 7 bedrooms?" And she said, and so we're like, "Well, that's going to be really expensive." So we're like, "Well, and what's the cost of it?" And she told us the monthly rent. It was exactly our budget. Exactly the amount that got in our budget. And God was like, "Told you." I had a place for you. So welcome to the Neko Neko house, which means the cat house. It's literally called the Neko Neko house. It has cats painted on it, as you can see. There are cats on every side of this house. Inside, all of the decor is done in cats. And this is our house. My daughter loves it because she loves cats. So God did have a place for us. And this was our first blessing before we even arrived in Japan. So we got to Japan super excited because our goal was we are going to plant a church in Osaka. We're going to plant a church. Our plan was simple. We were like, okay, 3 steps. Well, first of all, there really aren't that many Christians in Japan, so we can't start with a group of Christians. So step 1, meet people and make friends. Sounds simple enough. Step 2, share the gospel with those friends. And then step 3, plant a church. Simple enough. Well, step 1 was great because Osaka has the reputation of being the friendliest city in Japan. And let me tell you, they live up to their reputation. They are such friendly people. We arrived in Osaka not knowing a single person except for the landlady of our Neko Neko house. And very, very quickly, we started meeting people and making friends. We would just run into people in the marketplace, and they would come up to us and say hi, and let's be friends. And we're like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome." So very quickly, we gathered together a group of friends. And we were like, "Awesome, step 1, make friends, done." Okay, step 2, share the gospel. And this also was not as difficult as we expected because we were very open with people right away why we were in Japan, because obviously they meet Americans and their first question is, "What are you doing in Japan?" And so we got to say, "We're actually here to start a church." And people would be very curious about that, like, "What's a church? Why are you starting a church? What's this all about?" And so we loved to share with people what we were actually doing in Japan. And a lot of our friends were very interested very quickly. And so we reached a point where we were like, okay, we have a lot of friends who are asking us more questions about Jesus. They want to learn about God. This is a great time for us to start a church. Now, how do you start a church plant in America? Usually you get together a group of Christian friends, meet at your house, have a little service, worship songs and the guitar and that kind of thing, and start a church. And this is how we had done it in the past, and we were like, this is what we'll do. We have all of these friends. They're interested in coming in learning more about Jesus. So we invited them over to our wonderful blessing of a house, the Neko Neko house. So this is us and a bunch of our Japanese friends that we invited over. Now, we had a projector with the, worship music on it. My husband, he can do like 4 chords on the guitar, so worship leader. And we got some donuts because, of course, how do you invite people into church? You bring donuts. And we had the whole thing planned, and we invited people over, and people showed up, and they came to our church, and we shared the gospel with them, and we did worship songs, and we had donuts, and it was really great, and we had a wonderful time. And as they were leaving, we said, "Thank you guys so much for coming. Next Sunday, come back. We're going to do it all again." Well, next Sunday, we got our projector and our guitar and our donuts all ready, and no one came. and nobody showed up. And we were like, we planted a church that lasted 1 week. What did we do wrong? Well, we realized that a lot of the things that we would normally do in America don't necessarily work in a different culture. And of course, we had spent a lot of time studying Japanese culture before we arrived, but there are things that you just don't learn until you're there. So we talked to some of our friends and we said, what made you not want to come back? And first of all, we learned that meeting in a group in people's homes is actually super awkward in Japan. Like, it's not a thing that people do unless you're a cult, which is not the vibe we were going for. So because when you go into somebody's home, their home is a very private space. And so when you are invited to somebody's home, you're expected to dress nice and arrive with a gift. And while you're there, you're very polite and you show respect to the host of the house. And so when we were inviting all of our friends over for a house church, they came expecting that they needed to bring a gift and be polite and respect the host. And that is not the vibe that we wanted for a church. We didn't want people to feel like they had to bring us presents to come to church. So we're like, okay, this is not the right thing. And also, Japanese people, like I said before, are super, super busy. Really, really busy. Sunday mornings are not always available to them. In fact, a lot of times, that's the only day they get off at all. And so the idea of coming to something on a Sunday morning every single week was like, no, there's no way I'm committing to that. So we prayed about it, and we said, okay, this model is not working. What are we supposed to do? And God gave us this new model for a church that we call Church on the Move. And it is based on 3 principles: flexibility, fellowship, and fruitfulness. Now, first of all, for flexibility, it's flexible in the sense of where we meet and when. It does not have to be on Sunday mornings. Instead of trying to get everybody to come to us on the day that works for us, we looked at where are people actually gathering, what times of the week work for them. For example, a lot of men will get together on Friday nights after work downtown and hang out together, or moms will meet at Wednesday mornings in the park with their kids, or students will gather together on a Thursday evening in an unused classroom on campus, or things like this. And so we said, okay, we're going to take the church to the people where they're at. So we started what we call micro churches in different locations around Osaka. And we, instead of inviting people to our house, which was awkward, we would rent public rooms. They actually have in Osaka a thing that everybody does, is if you want to gather together in a group, you rent a room. And they have these super cool rooms of all different sizes that you can get. Either like you can have it as a classroom setting, or like it'll be set up like a living room with couches, or like a dining room with table and chairs, and you can bring food in and all of this stuff. So I think the next slide has a picture of, yeah, this was one of our micro churches. This is a public room. It looks just like a living room. So it's basically like doing a house church, but nobody's the host. So everybody's on equal footing. Everybody feels comfortable, and they can come and they can be themselves and actually open up and ask questions and talk about things that they wouldn't have done in somebody's home. And the other way in which we're flexible is in the way in which we present the gospel. Doing a sermon does not work because, at least not yet in our ministry, because we discovered how much the Japanese people have never heard of the gospel, never heard of Christianity, never heard of Jesus. So there are so many concepts that are completely foreign and new that needed to be explained. So what we would do is we would get the Bible passage that we were studying in Japanese and in English, because our Japanese is not good enough yet to do it totally in Japanese, but we're getting there. So we'll do it in Japanese and in English together, and we would ask the people, what words do you not understand? And let's talk about it. And we would write them on the board. So there'd be things like this, like repentance, authority, forgive, the concepts that were new in the way that we were presenting them. And one of the most important ones that we came across was the idea of sin. So one of the issues that we discovered as we were talking about this concept is the concept of sin, the way that we understand it in Christianity, doesn't really exist in the Japanese culture or language. In fact, a lot of the Bibles that have been translated into Japanese use a word that also means crime. And this can be a problem if you say to somebody, everybody is a criminal. Jesus came to save you from your crimes. And they're like, I'm not a criminal. I didn't commit any crimes. I guess I don't need Jesus. That doesn't work very well. And so this came up when we were studying the gospel. We were going through the gospel of Matthew, I believe it was. And one week we were doing the story of Zacchaeus. And in this case, it made sense to them because they were like, okay, yeah, Zacchaeus, he was a sinner. He was stealing money from people. That's bad. So it made a lot of sense to them why he was called a sinner and why it was so good for Jesus to go in and forgive him of that sin. But then the next week, we were doing the story of the calling of Peter as a disciple. The story where Jesus says, cast your net on the right side of the boat, and he pulls it in. It's all full of fish. And Peter says to Jesus, when he sees all the fish, he says, Rabbi, depart from me. I am a sinful man. And some of our Japanese friends asked us, they said, why did Peter say he's a sinful man? He was a good person. He's just an ordinary guy. He was a fisherman. Why did he say he was sinful? And so we said, okay, a way to explain sin. We were like, okay, how are we going to explain this? So what we said was, okay, imagine that your entire life, everything you've ever done or said or thought was made into a movie. Who would you let watch that movie? And everybody was like, no one. No one would be allowed to watch that movie. And we said, yes, the parts of that movie that you don't want people to see, that's sin in your life. And they were like, oh, everybody has that. Yes, exactly. Everybody has that, because that concept made sense. And so that is what Peter meant when he said, I am a sinner. He knew Jesus, saw everything in his life, and knew those parts he didn't want people to see. This next picture is, that's my husband, Patrick, and one of our students that was a friend of ours. He was very interested in learning more about Jesus, and so Patrick started meeting with him one-on-one regularly, and they were reading through the gospel story, and he got towards the end, and this is our friend Koma-san, and he said, can I read the last bit myself, and then I will come back and talk about it? And Patrick was like, sure, yeah, go ahead, read the end of the gospel, and then when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you think of it. So the next week, they got together for lunch, and my husband was so excited because he's like, Koma, what did you think of the end of the story? And he's like, it's the death and resurrection of Jesus. It's like the coolest story ever. And Koma was like, I didn't like it. And Patrick was like, why not? What didn't you like about it? He said, they were so mean to Jesus. And Patrick was like, what, you mean the Romans? Because, they crucified him. No, the disciples. He's like, what? What do you mean the disciples were mean to Jesus? And he couldn't figure out what he meant by this until after talking about it for a while, he realized that the word in the Japanese Bible for resurrection was the same word as resuscitation. And Koma misunderstood and thought that the disciples had taken the dead Jesus and resuscitated him to try to bring him back to life, and then carried him around like, Jesus, teach him all about the kingdom of God, and he's like half dead. And so, and that the ascension at the end was Jesus actually dying. And my husband was like, no, that's not at all what was going on. So after a little bit of explanation and understanding, the difference is that resuscitation means even though you were brought back to life, you will still die. Resurrection means even though you died, you will now live forever. And at that point, Koma said, oh, now I understand. Yes, I want to be a Christian now. And he was able to lead him to the Lord right there over lunch. And this was such a blessing. So some of these ideas that we have in Christianity are so brand new that they require a new way of explaining them. Another thing that our micro churches and our Church on the Move is focused on is fellowship, because community is so important. It's important in every culture, but in Japan, it's incredibly important. You need to be a part of the in-group, and belonging to a group is incredibly important. This is part of the reason why we keep our little churches small, so that everyone will feel connected and part of the group. And in addition to this, we will make sure that we get together with every member of the group one-on-one during the week. So we'll either have them over for dinner, or we'll go meet them at a restaurant, or we'll meet them at the park with their kids, or whatever it is, and go do things together. And these are the places where the opportunities for the really deep conversations come in. So this is a family who had been coming to one of our micro-church groups for a few weeks, and we had them over for dinner. And while we were eating dinner, we were asking them, what do you think about the things that you've been learning at the group that we've been talking about? And the wife, Shoko-san, she said, I'm really excited to learn about Jesus. I really think that I really love him, but I don't know how to make him love me. And I really want him to love me, but I don't know the rules that I have to follow to make him love me. Can you teach me the rules? And this was a great opportunity to be a missionary, I'll tell you what, because we got to say to her, Shoko-san, there are no rules. There are no rules. God already loves you right now before you do anything. And she started crying, and she kept repeating, there are no rules. There are no rules. And she was weeping, and she finally got control of herself and started taking another bite of dinner, and her husband leaned over to her and goes, hey, there are no rules. And she starts crying all over again. It was the first time she had understood the idea of grace, even though we didn't even introduce her to the word, the concept that God already loves you, even if you haven't done anything. Now, the other thing is we want our churches to be fruitful. And this even starts with kids. We get to do, I think we have a picture up there of our kids' church. Yeah, there's our little kids' church. One of our micro churches, the one that Shoko-san and her family were coming to, had quite a few families in it. So we started a little kids' church. And let me tell you guys, it's so fun to teach kids about God because they get so excited about it. Like, even just teaching them how to pray to Jesus is so much fun, because from a young age, in Japan, they're taught how to pray. You have to go down to the temple, and you have to bow to the God, and you have to throw money into this special box that makes it go clink, 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 so that, the God can hear that you're paying for the prayer. You have to clap to wake the God up, and then you have to actually say your name, because he doesn't know your name, and what you want, and hope that he'll be in the right mood that day to give you what you want. And you have to clap and bow again, and maybe buy a good luck charm on your way out, because that helps too. But when we get to teach these kids how to pray to God, we get to say, guess what? You don't have to go down to the temple, because he's right there with you. You can pray in your bedroom or right here where you are. And they're like, really? He's right here? We're like, yeah, he's right here with you all the time. And you don't have to pay money, because he doesn't need your money. He cares actually about your problems right now. And you don't have to tell him your name, because he already knows your name. And they're like, he knows my name? We're like, yes, he knows your name. And this is an amazing concept to them. And to be honest, for adults too. Some adults have been really touched by that idea that God knows their name and actually cares about their problems and about their life. And this is a new idea in Japan. So some of the things that, the challenges that we face, like I mentioned before, the busy culture. It's really, really busy. Like when we try to get together with somebody, usually be like, hey, can we meet for coffee? And they'll be like, sure, I've got a date free in 2 months. We're like, okay, I'll see you in 2 months then. And like everything has to be set out 6 to 8 weeks in advance because that's the first time they might have something free. And they probably won't come every week because it's really hard for them to set aside that much time every single week. And so we've had to incorporate different ways to be able to touch base with people and keep up with them. And the other thing is the idea that Christianity is a Western religion. So people often will be interested in hearing about it as kind of an academic exercise, like, oh, that's interesting, but it's not for me. I mean, Jesus is a white European guy, right? Like, that's where he's from, or maybe he lives in America, I don't know, but it always to them feels like a Western religion. Can I get the next slide up there? Oh, I forgot. This is another picture of one of our micro churches. Actually, skip to the next one. So one thing that we have been able to use that's been really helpful is these manga mission Bibles, where it tells the gospel story, tells the whole story of Jesus and the story of Adam and Eve in the fall. And it's all designed by Japanese people and written in Japanese, and it's all in comic book form. And these have been super helpful for us because we've had people open them and go, oh, this looks Japanese. We're like, yes, exactly. It is Japanese. And they say, well, but I thought that this was like a Western thing. And we're like, no, it's for everyone. And the coolest thing is at Christmas time, when we get to tell the story of Jesus' birth, we'll have a big Christmas party. And the people have never heard the story of Jesus' birth before. They don't know why people celebrate Christmas. And it's been really exciting to share the story with them. And the coolest thing is when we tell them where Jesus was born, that he was born in Bethlehem in Israel, which is in Asia. And they're like, wait, what? Jesus is Asian? And we're like, yes, yes, he is. So they're like, I thought he was European. No, he was Asian. And they're like, oh, and then they love the story of the wise men coming from the east to see Jesus in Bethlehem, because not only are they coming from Eastern Asia, but also they were not followers of God. They were people who belonged to a different religion and came to worship Jesus, and they said, so even if you didn't grow up with this religion, you can still come and worship Jesus. And we say, yes, this is for everyone. It's for you. So there are a lot of challenges that we're facing, but God is moving. So I want to end with just a couple little stories. One, this is the group that we've started on the college campus. So college students are cool, guys. They are like so ready to hear new ideas. They're sick of the whole concept of I'm just going to work to death my entire life for money, and they're like, what's the point after that? Like, there's got to be something more. They're hungry for something more. So this group has been meeting at the college Kansai Gaidai on Wednesday nights in an unused classroom. And at one point, we were approached, or somebody came to the college dean and said, hey, thank you for having this Christian group on campus. It's really meant a lot to me. And the dean was like, there's a Christian group on campus? He didn't know what was going on. So he contacted us and said, hey, I've heard good things about this group that you started on campus. Would you like us to make it an official college club? Now, if it's an official club, that means that they can actually advertise, because you're not allowed to advertise for like a religious club that's not official. And then they would be able to get more people in. So we were like, sure, that would be really cool. And then he said, but in order to be an official club, you have to treat all religions equally and promote them all the same. And we were like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Sorry, we can't do that. Well, so we thought, well, I guess we won't be an official club then. Well, there was no, stay on the same picture. There were a couple of students in the club that were actually Muslim. This interesting backstory, but anyways, they were actually Muslim, and they were been coming to this group, and they went to the dean of the college after they heard about this, and they said, "Now, do not let this group preach all religions equally. We've been to some of the other religious groups. Yeah, they're not cool. This group, this is the only place where you can actually learn about the true love of God. They need to only preach Christianity." So how cool is our God that he got Muslim students to go to the Buddhist dean of a secular college to promote the exclusivity of Christ? Amen? I mean, God is moving in amazing ways in Japan. And the last story I wanted to share with you was about my friend Aya. And we've had lots of conversations together. You can show the next slide. And we've gotten together many times because she's asked me a lot of things about God. And at one point, on my last day in Japan, and this is back in June before I had to come back to the States for our itineration, she called me and she said, "Kalyna, I've been reading in the Bible, and I have some questions. Can we get together for lunch?" And I was like, "No, I don't really do that." No, I'm kidding. I was like, "Yes, let's get together for lunch. You want to talk about the Bible? Let's do this." So we got together for lunch, and she had some interesting questions about Jesus' teachings and stuff. And then she said to me, after we had talked about it for a while, she said, "So are you a Christian because you're a good person, or are you a good person because you're a Christian?" And I was like, I had to think about that for a second. I was like, "Oh, I'm a good person because I'm a Christian." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm a good enough person to be a Christian." And I said, "Aya, that's the whole point. You don't have to be good enough because Jesus has already been good enough for you. And when you follow him, he inspires you to be a good person." And she was very touched by this. And she said, I need to learn more about this. Can we start meeting regularly to talk more about the Bible? And I was like, "I have to leave tomorrow." And it was so hard for me to get on a plane and come back here, you guys, because she wanted to start. And so she's been texting me all these months, "When are you coming back to Japan? I'm ready to start our Bible study." I'm like, "I'm coming soon, I promise." So I'm very excited to get back to Japan. I'm going to be leaving at the end of March, so it's getting close. I just wanted to leave you guys with this. No matter when things seem too hard, or people seem too lost, or things just feel impossible, God is moving. God is moving, and he has started an amazing movement in Japan. And it's not just with our group. We have missionaries in Japan, a lot of them are in Tokyo, who have been there for many years, and they are saying, there is a new move of God happening in Japan right now. People who have been missionaries there for 20, 30 years and have been praying and praying and praying for a move of God, they're like, he's moving now. Now is a huge opportunity for people to come to God in Japan. And we are so, so privileged to be a part of this movement. So if you feel like you would like to contribute to us and to be a part of our ministry, I think I have a QR code up there. Do I have that? Yeah. I know that you're going to do an offering after this, but if you feel like you would like to be one of our monthly supporters and contribute to our planting our micro churches, this is the giving link. You see, our goal in this last term, we planted 3 of these micro churches, and our goal is to have a dozen of them around Osaka over the next few years, where we can reach people where they're at with the gospel. My plan, personally, the one I want to start as soon as I get back, is a microchurch for moms, starting with my friend Aya, who's desperate to have a Bible study. But because I have so many friends who are moms who are stuck in there's such a high pressure on moms to have your kids perform well and to have everything be perfect, and they're looking for hope and guidance in the Savior. And so I am super excited to be starting a mom's group, and my husband is actually already in Japan. He just got there a couple weeks ago, and he's getting another group started up that we're going to be launching in April. So I'm very excited to get back to Japan. If you would like to join us, please look at the giving link and help us to make the land of the rising sun the land of the risen sun. Thank you so much.